Chapter 4. As your world continues to unfold over the next few years, there will be waves of change that every soul awakens to. This awakening brings more compassion, empathy, and mindful presence to each moment. Gone will be the days of being so busy that leave your head spinning. Each soul will have the tools to move forward with their intuition and how they want to proceed in their life with their contributions to society. Goliath and Medusa. This leads us to our next story, one of contribution and honoring your soul's intuition. We speak of Goliath and Medusa. Leave behind what you have heard in the past of these souls, for the truth was hidden and shall now be revealed. Goliath was a man of unspeakable strength that was brought up in Roman times of war and conflict. Goliath's tale begins when he had a vision as a young man of a beautiful woman named Medusa. Medusa was known as the goddess of betrayal. Medusa was betrayed by the man she loved, and with but a mere glance from her eyes could turn another into stone. Medusa over the centuries began to understand that the betrayal she felt in her heart ran deep in her soul, and she wanted to make amends for the many lives she had taken in her anger and defeat. She spoke to Goliath in a dream, mesmerizing him with her beauty, for Goliath at the time could be easily manipulated by outward beauty. Medusa's change of heart was authentic and true. She wanted to help many souls, many leaders that she knew could make a difference in the world by offering them a helping hand. She made the decision to start with Goliath, to speak to him through his dreams, and give him insight and signs along his path that spoke of his role to come. Each morning that Goliath awoke, he could not deny the signs he was seeing at night that would come true throughout his day. With the consistency of seeing Medusa every night in his dream state, this was leading Goliath to one outcome: to defeat the warlord of Rome. Goliath had been training as a soldier for as long as he could remember, and he was satisfied with his life, serving the Roman Empire. Goliath was currently stationed outside of Rome with a few other soldiers guarding one of the back roads that led into the city. They had permission to question anyone that crossed their path, turn them away, or do what they saw fit for the road to be kept safe and ultimately protected. When Medusa began to visit Goliath in his dreams, he only vaguely remembered certain words or emotions he would have when she would speak to him. Through their continual visits at night, though, in his subconscious mind, the messages, words, and wisdom began to forge lasting memories of each piece of knowledge that was shared with him. Goliath was beginning to understand the greater role he had to play. Medusa was showing Goliath to follow his intuition and showed him the signs that would lead him to the capital. With each passing day, Goliath became stronger with knowing his intuition and following his awareness of how his body and energy felt in each circumstance on the road. He was awakening to his true potential. Medusa began with lessons that would teach Goliath the respect of both the female and the male. These teachings would take months, for Goliath was brought up with the understanding that the male was the dominant one, the one who killed and conquered. The woman was to stay at home, take care of the children, and please the men. There was an unraveling of Goliath's mind that took place at night. He was grateful to have the easy task of watching the road during the day, to begin to understand and integrate a more expansive way of living and being. Goliath was beginning to see with his own eyes that the soldiers that he was stationed with took what they wanted, thinking they had a level of superiority over everyone else. With Medusa's guidance, Goliath began to ever so slightly pass on the smallest bits of wisdom to the others through questions he would pose to them, opening their own minds in the process. Goliath saw this as his contribution to changing his piece of the world that he lived in. By helping his group, he was ideally taking on a much larger platform, opening the minds of others. He saw that violence, killing, and death led to destruction and unwanted loss for so many. When you're brought up in a world where you think there's only one way of being, and you then begin to see another view, especially in that time period, one has to be careful. What you say and how you act can be misinterpreted as not being of sound mind. If this was the case, you were dealt with by either being placed in a dungeon of neglect, torture, and abuse, or killed on sight. Goliath knew he had to tread lightly with how he interpreted the world now. Medusa was also beginning to change the way that she was teaching Goliath. Medusa opened doorways of possibility for Goliath. He was able to see changing timelines and outcomes. This altered Goliath's belief system at such a rapid pace that he was not the same person he was just a year ago. As Goliath's group of men began to change their ways, Medusa started to visit each one of them in their dream state. Medusa brought the men up to speed with Goliath, showing them a brighter world that could happen when only a few people voiced their truth for true change and peace. In Medusa's dream visits, she also showed the men they could take down their leader of hate and violence. Removing the warlord of Rome would be no easy feat. Goliath and the others knew this by witnessing all those that blindly followed him. The warlord's name was David, and he had spread a poisonous way of thinking throughout Rome, which was now spilling throughout the lands. This way of thinking was dishonorable, deceitful, and full of greed. It spread like a virus, sinking great fear into all the people of the land if they did not obey the rules, pay the taxes, and listen to the demands of those that ruled. Medusa, Goliath, and his team of awakened soldiers made the decision to leave their post on the road and venture into the Rome capital. A plan had emerged to go into the city under the cloak of night and find out where David's sleeping quarters were. The team knew David would be under heavy guard, and David himself was not to be trifled with, as he was a great warrior himself. They also knew that hate and corruption seethed from every part of David. He despised people who were in poverty and in need. David looked at women as being expendable and did horrific things to them over and over again. The root of this hate was deep inside David. Medusa showed the men this, and that taking out David, taking out the root of the problem, was the only solution. After many weeks of watching David and his routine, the team of Goliath prepared their weapons and gear. For the night had come to take their leader down and reprise a new way of life with balance and truth. the team quietly snuck into the hallways of David's dwelling. 2 of the team members began to silence each guard by taking them down, and the 3rd team member was a scout for anyone who came upon them unexpectedly. Goliath's role was to enter the room and kill David. There was no room for keeping him alive either. For Medusa had shown Goliath that even if he was kept alive in the dungeons, his hatred and following would continue to spread throughout the lands. Death was the only option for David. When the guards were taken out and the threat of being discovered was eliminated, Goliath entered David's room. David was sitting there, waiting, armed and ready. David also had spies among spies that would report back to him with any activity that was deemed suspicious. When you live in a state of fear, hate, and violence your entire life, you live in a state of paranoia. Goliath's team was spotted a few days ago, and David had begun watching them nightly. When Goliath entered the room that fateful night, this was a fight between good and evil. Goliath and David both succumbed to their death that night, but now hope and change radiated from Goliath's team. Goliath's team survived, and they began to slowly seep knowledge into others, the same way that Goliath had done with each one of them, through questions and asking, "Does this need to be so?" Goliath's story is one of bravery and perseverance. Goliath completed his role. He took out the root of hate and followed his soul's mission. This led to a ripple effect that lasted for years to come in Rome. The seed was planted, and throughout the coming centuries, there would be balance. These memories of old are to show each one of you the courage and strength it took for these incredible souls to follow their intuition and guidance. They knew what they had to do, no matter the outcome. Each soul on earth has a role to play. In a way, this is a game, yes. However, this time the outcome will be balance, unity, and peace. There have been many stories about David and Goliath that have been misinterpreted and misconstrued for religious and deceptive purposes. Ever since Earth was first seeded, there has been a struggle for balance. Now each soul has the opportunity, the gift, to accomplish what no other planet has been able to do in such a short amount of time. To bring the light to the dark, for the dark to see the light, and for the light to face their shadows.